Citizens from certain Asian countries are abandoning the American dream and returning home in record numbers. Discover which Asian nations have decided to abandon America completely this year. 10. Bangladesh, tucked between India and the Bay of Bengal. Bangladesh is making quiet but powerful moves away from American influence. In 2025, its deepening partnership with China has shifted the balance. Massive investments from Beijing have transformed ports and rail lines, making China the country's most reliable development partner. The U.S., once a key voice, is now watching from the sidelines. It's a clear sign. Dhaka is done waiting for Western promises. One of the boldest shifts came in the military arena. For years, Bangladesh cooperated with Washington on defense training and joint operations. But that cooperation is cooling fast. With sanctions, threats, and political pressure from the U.S., Bangladesh is turning to suppliers who ask fewer questions. China and even Russia are stepping in where the U.S. once stood strong. Meanwhile, Dhaka's trade ambitions are firmly rooted in Asia. Instead of depending on U.S. markets, Bangladesh is joining regional alliances and looking to ASEAN, India, and China for economic partnerships. Its booming garment industry now finds new buyers closer to home. In 2025, the message is loud and clear. Bangladesh is no longer a quiet ally. It's carving its own path. 9. Pakistan. Few countries have danced such a complicated tango with the U.S. as Pakistan. But in 2025, the music is changing. Islamabad is leaning further into its relationship with China, not just diplomatically, but militarily. The joint development of fighter jets and technology sharing with Beijing is redefining who Pakistan trusts with its defense future. Washington's influence. It's shrinking fast. The once crucial alliance in counterterrorism is now a shadow of what it was. Pakistan has grown tired of being the scapegoat for America's failures in Afghanistan. U.S. drone strikes and aid conditionality bred years of resentment. Today, that frustration has matured into a quiet divorce. Islamabad is now choosing allies who support its interests without constant lectures. Fueling this shift is a new economic partner, Russia. Pakistan's decision to start importing discounted Russian oil was a bold defiance of U.S. pressure. It signaled a new era of pragmatic diplomacy, one driven by survival, not ideology. For the first time in decades, Pakistan is no longer caught in someone else's war. It's picking its own battles, and the U.S. is not part of the strategy. 8. Sri Lanka. On the surface, Sri Lanka looks calm, but underneath, the island nation is undergoing a major geopolitical shift. In 2025, its bond with China has reached a new level, rooted in deep financial ties. The famous Hambantota port, leased to Beijing after a massive debt crisis, is now a symbol of Sri Lanka's turn away from the West. The U.S., once a key voice in the region, is watching as influence quietly slips away. Colombo is choosing cash and control over Western lectures. CRI, Lanka's foreign policy, has embraced something powerful: neutrality. Rather than picking sides in the growing U.S.-China rivalry, the country has opted to remain strategically unaligned. That means rejecting military partnerships with the U.S., avoiding sanctions games, and steering clear of alliances that come with political strings. The appeal: it keeps foreign troops out, and local control in human rights have long been a sore spot between Sri Lanka and the U.S. Washington's criticisms, especially after the Civil War, were never forgotten. But China and other Eastern partners offer development without demands. That difference has pushed Colombo further away from Washington's grip. In 2025, Sri Lanka is no longer the West's project hits, a nation determined to choose its own allies on its own terms. 7. Thailand. Thailand isn't making noise, but make no mistake, it's moving. In 2025, the kingdom is quietly rebalancing its foreign ties, stepping further away from the U.S. and toward Eastern powers. Joint military drills with China and growing cooperation with Russia mark a dramatic shift in defense priorities. For a longtime treaty ally of the U.S., this move is not subtle. It's strategic and it's deliberate. The tension didn't start on the battlefield, but in politics. American criticism of Thailand's monarchy, protests, and past coups created years of discomfort. While Washington pushed for reforms, Bangkok felt cornered. That pressure only hardened Thailand's resolve to seek out less judgmental partners. The result? A pivot to the east that values stability over ideology. At the heart of Thailand's future is its economy, and that economy is now more tied to its neighbors than to Washington. Trade within ASEAN, investments from China, and integration through the RCEP have made the U.S. less essential. Thailand is chasing opportunity, not old alliances. In 2025, the message is subtle but firm. We'll work with UBAT only on our terms. 6. Indonesia. Indonesia is not picking sides, it's picking itself. In 2025, Southeast Asia's largest nation is holding tight to its non-aligned stance, even as the US and China battle for influence. While Washington urges Jakarta to lean west, Indonesia keeps walking straight down the middle. The more the pressure builds, the more determined it becomes to stay independent. It's a quiet power move, and it's working. China has already won the economic game here. It's Indonesia's top trading partner by far, and that gap is growing each year. Massive investments in mining, tech, and infrastructure have made Beijing hard to ignore. At the same time, US economic influence is losing its edge. For Jakarta, the path is clear. Build the economy, but do it with those who show up without a political agenda. Defense is also shifting. Indonesia has cooled on US weapons and training deals, focusing instead on diversifying its military suppliers and building local capability. That means fewer American-made jets, more homegrown innovation, and a stronger regional identity. In 2025, Indonesia isn't walking away from the US, it's simply walking taller on its own feet. 5. Malaysia. Malaysia is done playing by someone else's rules. In 2025, it's steering its foreign policy away from Western influence and toward a future shaped by its own interests. One key reason: a rising tide of public frustration with US policies, especially in the Middle East. Many Malaysians view America's role in global conflicts as hypocritical and biased, and that perception is driving a political shift. The government is listening and adjusting course, while Washington tries to maintain influence. China is already making big moves in Malaysia's digital future. From 5G networks to AI collaboration, Chinese tech giants are becoming vital partners. US firms, once dominant, are now facing strict regulations and waning trust. The message from Kuala Lumpur is clear: innovation is welcome, but control is not. Malaysia wants the tech, not the interference. On the trade front, the numbers speak for themselves. China has outpaced the US in imports, exports, and investment. Regional agreements like RCEP have only accelerated that trend. For Malaysia, the pivot isn't just political, it's economic survival. It's not about cutting ties with the US, it's about embracing partners who move at the same speed, speak the same language, and respect the nation's sovereignty. For Vietnam, Vietnam is playing a high-stakes balancing game, and in 2025, it's starting to lean east. Once seen as a quiet US partner in the region, Hanoi is now rethinking its strategy. Despite historical tensions with China, Vietnam is finding more value in cautious cooperation than open confrontation. Trade is booming, diplomacy is warming, and the lines between friend and rival are blurring fast. For the US, this shift is more than disappointing, its strategic loss. The truth is, trust in Washington has always had limits. While the US offered security ties and investment, its long-term reliability was never guaranteed. Political swings in Washington left Vietnamese leaders unsure of who or what they were really dealing with. That uncertainty pushed Hanoi to diversify its alliances, avoiding dependence on any single power, especially one half a world away. Vietnam is now investing heavily in regional frameworks. ASEAN, local security pacts, and inter-Asian trade deals have taken center stage. The Indo-Pacific strategy backed by the US is beginning to feel like an outsider's vision. In 2025, Vietnam isn't turning its back on America, but it's making sure it doesn't need it. That's not betrayal, it's smart survival. 3. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is rewriting the rules of global power, and it's doing it without the US at the center. In 2025, the kingdom's bold pivot toward the East is shaking up decades of alignment with Washington. It's Decision to join BRICS and deepen ties with China and Russia signals a future where American influence is no longer guaranteed. For a country once reliant on U.S. protection, this is a dramatic and deliberate departure. One of the most telling moves is in the oil market. Saudi Arabia, the world's energy heavyweight, is now trading more oil in Chinese yuan instead of the U.S. dollar. That shift isn't just economic, it's symbolic. It challenges the petrodollar system that has underpinned American power for decades. Riyadh is sending a message. Global trade doesn't have to revolve around Washington. Anymore, military independence is rising too. The kingdom is scaling back its reliance on U.S. arms and building its own defense industry with help from new partners. Drones, missiles, and surveillance tech are now coming from multiple sources. In 2025, Saudi Arabia is no longer playing the role of loyal client, it's acting like a global player. The U.S. isn't being pushed out, it's being left behind. To Iran has never followed Washington's lead. But in 2025, it's doubling down on that defiance with purpose and precision. Tired of decades under U.S. sanctions, Tehran is forging a powerful alliance with China and Russia. Multi-decade cooperation deals, massive infrastructure investments, and joint military exercises are tightening those bonds fast. Iran isn't just resisting American pressure, it's building a future where the U.S. has no seat at the table. Ideology still plays a role, but today, it's about strategy. Iran has learned to survive and even thrive outside Western systems. It's now a key player in the international north-south transport corridor, connecting Asia to Europe without touching a single Western port. That new trade route bypasses U.S. control and puts Iran at the center of a rising global network. Isolation has turned into opportunity. Militarily, Iran is stronger than ever and more connected. It's arming and training with Russian help, securing drones and systems once out of reach. And with China offering economic shelter, Tehran no longer fears U.S. sanctions the way it once did. In 2025, Iran isn't just leaving the U.S. orbit, it's helping build a world where that orbit doesn't matter. 1. India. India is not walking away from the U.S., it's rising beyond it. In 2025, the world's most populous democracy is shaping its destiny as a pole in a new multipolar world. Once courted by Washington as a counterbalance to China, New Delhi has made it clear it won't be anyone's pawn. Strategic autonomy is no longer a slogan, it's policy, and that means charting a course that doesn't orbit around American interests. Despite Western pressure, India continues buying Russian oil, trading with Iran, and negotiating independently with China. It's not about siding with rivals, it's about choosing flexibility over alignment. While the U.S. wanted a strong ally, India wants strong options. That approach is winning support at home and abroad, positioning India as a diplomatic force that plays by its own rules, not someone else's. Technology is another front where India is asserting control. New digital laws are checking the power of American tech giants while local companies rise to compete. From e-commerce to AI, India is building an ecosystem that protects its data and its people. In 2025, India is no longer the emerging power the West hoped to mold. It's a global heavyweight setting its own terms, and everyone, including the U.S., is adjusting to that reality. So, with these 10 countries stepping away from U.S. influence in 2025, which one surprised you the most, and why do you think they made that move now? Drop your thoughts below. I read every comment. Also, where are you watching this from? For more eye-opening shifts happening around the world, don't miss the video popping up on your screen right now. Seriously, click it and share this with someone who still thinks the U.S. holds all the cards. They need to see how fast the game is changing.